Thank you, Rose. And as earlier mentioned, the man in the ring tonight is a straight shooter, famous for his statement, "Hii mkutano itakwisha." He has been courted by almost all the political elites eyeing the top seat in 2022. Isaac Rutto. Rutto with the double T.
Yes. Yes.
Welcome to Punchline.
Thank you.
You have re-emerged from the political wilderness that one enters when they lose an election.
Sabbatical.
It was a sabbatical, was it?
Yes.
And here you are now being a man who seems to be courted by almost everyone except the deputy president. How does it feel now to be the blue-eyed boy in the Rift Valley?
I'm not sure. I don't know what blue-eyed means. Only that I'm back to my element.
You're back in your element.
Yes.
And I mean, obviously, you ran for the Bomet seat and lost, and to a formidable woman, the late Dr. Laboso. You were seen to be playing nice. In fact, you're quoted saying pretty much that it was time now to let her lead and that you wanted your time out of the spotlight. What happened while you were out of the spotlight, and have your political views remained the same since 2017?
Yes. Basically, I'm the same person. I still believe in devolution. I believe in good governance. And I also believe in a better arrangement of the political arena.
And what would that be?
I will believe that this country does not require a presidential system per se. There should be a mix between presidential system and a parliamentary system of government. I also believe that there must be strong devolved systems that are able to deliver development down to the villages of this country.
And we'll talk about that when we look at what is being proposed in terms of constitution review of some kind. But when you talk about a change in the political system, you know, one would think 2022 is next year if you're to take, you know, the political ongoings at face value. Do you think we are over politicking? Some have accused the deputy president of, you know, starting off way too early with his ambitions. Is this the time to talk 22?
This is not the time, and it's very strange because he's the only one talking it. The president isn't, the prime minister, the former prime minister isn't, Kalonzo Musyoka isn't, Mudavadi isn't, all the other players aren't.
Except Raila Odinga, who recently talked about a tsunami coming to wipe Tanga off pretty much the face of the earth.
Well, but he has not been as active as the deputy president. And basically, I'm in agreement with what the president said just after the elections, that in spite of the dissatisfaction with the way the elections were conducted, we needed to give Kenyans peace. We needed to allow Kenyans to develop. We need to allow children to grow. We need to allow them to go to school. We must not participate in events that can lead to the loss of children like baby Pendo. Remember what happened to her. We really can't be doing those sort of things after every election. Yeah. I think handshake is the way forward. Every time after the elections, I would like to see contestants shaking their hands and saying, go on, because they are still citizens of this country. We owe it to posterity.
Yeah, and I mean, you can say that because you actually did give Honorable the late Laboso that courtesy and let her lead, and you, after a ferocious fight for Bomet. But having said that, you seem to be making political moves yourself, especially your rekindling, if you like, of affections with Gideon Moi. So aren't you playing politics yourself?
No, Gideon Moi is an age mate. He's been a colleague, and we've known one another for very many years. And we have no political agenda at the moment.
You have also been quoted recently as saying that the Rift Valley should be allowed to democratize. You do not want, quote, leaders imposed on you. Yes. That certainly is politics.
Yes. What is happening in Rift Valley, what has been happening is that there has been a lot of imposition of leaders. That is why if you look at the general landscape, it is devoid of self-made political leaders. Most of them are just basically swept onto the scene. Once they are there, most of them are basically clueless.
Who's imposing them on the people of the Rift Valley?
There is a political status quo that tends to push in individuals.
And who are the members of the political status quo?
I don't have to name them.
This
I
is
think
Punchline, you certainly do. You're referring to the deputy president, aren't you?
They are well known on the political
You're
arena.
saying the deputy president has positioned his people in the Rift Valley and imposed them on the will of the average citizen.
Yes, that's my view.
That is your view.
That's my view.
There's been a lot of talk about strength in numbers, and nobody likes it, tyranny of numbers. And whenever that conversation comes up, it's about Central and the Rift Valley as well. And specifically in the Rift Valley, we saw also in recent days, this kind of talk around, let's not split our vote. The region has traditionally voted, as a bloc. Do you see that your efforts and your call for democratization really will become the contest between possibly Gideon Moi and the deputy president in terms of who is the supremo of the region?
I think the main issue that we should be driving is how to bring agenda that is based on policies onto the table. And we must move away slowly, away from the tribal arithmetic. I have never quite agreed with the so-called tyranny of numbers, because what are you telling the others? What will happen to the El Molo? What will happen to the Taita? What will happen to the Maasai? If every other time is a question of the tyranny of numbers.
Right.
The Mount Kenya and Rift Valley cannot continue to load over Kenyans in that manner. No. We want to see leaders that have an agenda for the rest of the republic, that are going to ensure that there is proper development, that there is proper freedom, that the Bill of Rights is being respected, that the separation of powers is respected. As of now, the way I see the way the judiciary is moving is a pale shadow of itself when it was being headed by Mutunga.
How do you mean?
It is slowly playing ball
With the executive?
With the executive.
What makes you say that?
I have seen a lot of cases being refused hearing. Recently, we saw, for example, the one of Mau. They went, they have not been heard for the last 2 months. And yet this is a very critical agenda that deals with the human rights, that deal with basic, the Bill of Rights. But no one is listening to them.
And we'll talk about the Mau, because you've been very vocal on it. But just as we quickly finish up on the politics of the region. So you're saying you're not in alliance with Gideon Moi and with KANU. CCM is what?
CCM is a political party like KANU. KANU is a political party.
So there have been no talks to see how they can work together come 2022? We
have not had any specific structured talks between Chama Cha Mashinani and the KANU.
But you remain firmly in NASA?
NASA was an arrangement up to 2017. Up to that election. After the election, I don't think there is still NASA.
We hosted Musalia Mudavadi the other day, and he said that, according to your agreement, is it 3 parties would have to formally pull out for NASA, not for that coalition agreement to cease. So is CCM planning to formally pull out of NASA?
Not exactly that. We've not discussed those issues. We are thinking that the main agenda for NASA was for winning the 2017 elections. After that, there is no joint agenda to be pushed for 5 years. There was an agenda if we were in government, if we won the elections. Then we had a clear roadmap. Without that, then we put that on hold. We are simply basically saying that we should play the role of the official opposition.
And that's not the role that is seemingly being played, other than for Musalia Mudavadi, who has even come out and said he's the official leader of the opposition because of the handshake arrangement, which has seen both the former prime minister and the former vice president take on some sort of capacities granted to them by the executive. So in your understanding, if NASA was supposed to play the leader of the official opposition, is that now Mudavadi's task? Is that yours?
You see, essentially that should be Raila Odinga's. And I've kept saying that, that in my own view, the handshake did not, in my view, envisage a situation in which Raila Odinga would cease to be the official leader of the opposition. He should have remained there, because there is a clear role for the official leader of the opposition. But there we are with the deficiencies of this constitution, because the leader of opposition is outside parliament. So there is no way he can even exercise that particular oversight role because he's not even in control of his own troops. His troops can be raided in parliament. And that's why I've always believed that we made a mistake there. We should have allowed the leader of the opposition to be in parliament. And maybe created a threshold upon which once a party attains, it ought to be, its leader ought to be in parliament, so that the leaders in parliament, the parliamentarians, can be guided. Most of them are first-timers.
So you wouldn't go to the extent of sort of blaming him and saying it is because...
I can't blame him.
You think it's a function
of
the
constitution.
I think
it is a structural problem which we inbuilt into this constitution. That locks Raila Odinga outside the main political arena. Because you can't drive a bus from the outside. You have to be inside.
You have to be inside.
For you to drive your bus.
Right.
But here is a constitution that ensures that the driver of the official opposition bus is actually outside the bus. Then how will he keeps winking and shouting at the guy inside, please drive it this way, drive it that way, telling Buddy. And Buddy maybe is not interested.
And, fine. So NASA is not, do you think, just to conclude it, that in 2022, there may be the possibility of still the same parties coming together under the same banner, or do you see things changing? Is the handshake changing political realignment?
As usual, every election is never the same as the previous election. I expect those who are in Jubilee to probably join up with those who are in the opposition. Those who are in the opposition might join up with those who are in
And
Jubilee.
who will you join with?
No, that's neither here nor there right now. We are waiting to see, and we will want to look at the political agenda. But I think that will be clear once we agree on the format of the constitution that
you want, and we'll talk about the constitution very soon. Now, what do you think of the Deputy President's ambitions, though? Is he a man who you believe is fit to lead?
Well, I would be judgmental, and I would probably be unfair to him, because we are not contesting a similar seat with him. The point is that Kenyans can judge him from what he has been doing.
But you've worked with him closely, not just as a leader in your region.
I disagreed with him on a number of issues, including in which he insists on having his way on everything. In my view, there ought to be a consultative way of leadership. What
do you mean by that, that he insists on having his view on everything?
Yeah, because I don't even know what exactly the view is. But every other time, I don't understand the basis of his arguments.
Like which argument?
Like, for example, when he says Kenyans should not be discussing constitutional changes right now. What does that mean? I thought Kenyans are free to discuss every issue, and everyone should bring forth his ideas. I would expect to see his ideas on the table.
So when you hear people say, particularly from your region, that the handshake and the BBI have been designed to lock the Deputy President out of office?
No, that is just being extremely myopic, because...
Myopic?
I think so. Come to think of it, what is the problem with the handshake? What is the problem when Raila Odinga and President Kenyatta agree that they were very fierce contestants, but for the sake of this country, they agree, let's move on. And they listed 9 issues. And the 9 issues were what we need to sort out to fix the problems we have in Kenya. When you talk about building bridges, it means working together, building bridges, making sure that there is no valley between you and me. You see what was happening. We were developing in 2017 what actually led us to almost to the abyss in 2007. That look, those who voted for Raila Odinga want to fight with those who voted for Uhuru Kenyatta. Is that the country we want? Do we have to call in Kofi Annan every other time? Any other Kofi Annan, if the other Kofi Annan isn't there? Do we have to call outside and come and sort out our problems? In my view, it is no. And in my view, Raila Odinga and President Kenyatta did the right thing.
What seat are you running for? Governor?
I'm yet to decide.
Okay, we'll see if you have decided by the end of this program. Let's move on to the Maasai Mau, and you've been involved in negotiations regarding, attempts to resolve the issues, the dispute, I should say, around the Maasai Mau for the last 10 years. Why is it that we have not reached a solution?
We have not reached a solution because every other time a solution is being pushed through from the top. And I have been against that. I would like a situation in which there is clear discussion and engagement between government and the local community on resolving the problem. And that is through the leadership, both the Narok leadership and those from around the region. We should involve both the leaders in Narok, Kericho, Bomet, and Nakuru, and agree on how to resolve the matter.
You're saying in the last 10 years there has been no sit down between community and government to reach a decision?
There has been none.
And some would say that
Absolutely.
it isn't, that there isn't even need to have that kind of discussion, because the Maasai Mau is clearly a critical ecological area and is public land and therefore is a preserve of government.
If it is critical, that is all the more reason that the people should be convinced that it's a critical water catchment area. Remember, when we are discussing now the question of Maasai Mau, Maasai Mau is not government land. It is not under the Kenya Forest Service. It is not gazetted as a forest. There are 22 blocks which the Water Towers is talking about. Of the 22, only 21 are gazetted for protection by government. The number 22 is Maasai Mau, which actually is trust land for settlement. Trust land is for settlement. It is not trust land to become a forest. Where is that law? Where is it in the legal framework of this country?
You know, and you've said that in an interview, but you know, the 2009 Prime Minister's task force, the one that led to the fallout between you and Raila Odinga, then his task force on the Mau, noted that there's a distinction between the land that was available for the settlement, part of which went to group ranches.
Yes.
And it also said there were forested areas and water catchment areas, which, quote, that report says, trust land to be conserved as common good. So are you saying that the Prime Minister's task force in that respect was wrong? Because they make a clear distinction, some settlement land, some land to be conserved.
That is an opinion of the task force. I would have liked them to develop that opinion and move it forward, escalate it, bring it forth and say, now, what we are talking about as critical, because no one had done that before. That there is a certain area in Maasai Mau that is critical for water catchment area. Tell us the coordinates, go and survey it, and then gazette it.
You're saying it is not a water catchment area?
No. Officially, it is not. It is just a statement. It's like me and you forming a task force and going to declare a place.
But this is a
wetland.
task force of the government.
No, a task force of government. This country operates according to the law. No, once they had that opinion, they would have developed a cabinet memo. The cabinet would have approved it, develop a bill, send it to parliament for enactment, or a gazette notice that this is now a protected area by virtue of the powers given to the Minister for Environment. We now declare this area as a water catchment area or as a sensitive ecological area or environmental area, and then we proceed. And then we say now, therefore, there were mistakes done by the previous county council of Narok, that they settled it, that they issued it out for settlement.
And let me hold you on that so that we can talk about that a little later. But I just wanted to be clear with you in terms of the definition of this area as a water catchment area. For instance, if you don't trust the Prime Minister's committee, which you're saying was purely opinion, but what about the United Nations Environment Program, which was very clear in saying that the Maasai Mau is a vital water catchment area for the Wasunyiro and the Mara rivers? Are you disputing also that finding of the UNEP?
The UNEP finding was a finding. Now it should translate into a legal framework in the country that we now declare this area officially as a water catchment area. I have no problem with any study. In fact, I have been asking the ministry, show us the studies that define this area as a strategic environmental zone. And I want to point out clearly that we are not against declaring any area of importance to the environment, including up to even where I live, which is about 70 kilometers downstream. I don't mind that. Once the government declares it, then let's proceed. There is the compulsory acquisition provision. People will be moved from one point to another point.
So you accept
being given. We have
that
no problem.
Under Article 62, that this then is a water catchment area that should be held in trust for all Kenyans by the national government if they went ahead and produced what, a cabinet
Yeah, they should proceed
document?
and do a cabinet memo.
A cabinet memo?
Let the cabinet pass it, bring a bill to parliament to declare the area, to annex the area, and declare it now a national government, either forest or whatever it is, and gazette it. And now say this is now under the auspices of
You should
KFS.
gazette it as such.
As of now, KFS has no business interfering with people's land. No opinion of any group of individuals can become law. Not even the views of a prime minister, not even the views of the president will become law. No.
Why do you
There
think
must be a
that has
process.
not happened, the formality of it?
The formality hasn't been done.
Why do you think that has not happened?
I think there's been quite a bit of carelessness and a bit of chest stamping on the part of the previous ministers, whoever they have been in charge, and then it gets clouded in politics, and that's why we've been saying let's participate.
Is it
and then we
carelessness or
proceed.
interests?
Yeah?
Is it carelessness or interest? Because what is happening with this debate past the Maasai Mau trust land is people are talking now about the entire Mau complex and who owns what there.
Who owns what is really irrelevant. Like, for instance, when we developed the SGR, we never discussed who owns which land. We said the SGR starts from Mombasa all the way to where it is in Narok, and it is passing through Kiguta's farm, and therefore Kiguta's farm will have to be compulsorily acquired according to the procedures of law. And no one is shouting about Ilipita Shambayango. No. The point I'm saying is, if indeed government wants Maasai Mau, that's a good idea. Go ahead. We must. You can even expand it even more. You can come all the way to half of Bomet. But now, follow the law. That's what we are saying.
Let me ask you this. In 2005, there were about 10,000, I think, people, 10,000 actually, who were forced out of the Maasai Mau by government. And that same year, the Ministry of Lands estimated that less than 2,000 squatters deserved compensation as bona fide purchases of land at that time. How did we move from these 10,000 to now more than 60,000 families living in that area?
I think that was an understatement even then, because there was no proper profiling. And even now, even that statement of 60,000 families, I don't think is the accurate situation. You know, this is an area where we have got 3 members of the county assemblies. This is an area that has schools. This is an area that has assistant chiefs. This is an area that has several other government infrastructure.
So there are more than 60,000 families there.
Including roads. And even there's even a road that was officially launched by the president in that area. There is the last mile connectivity in that area. And then all of a sudden government said, no, this is a forest. Can you all go away? How do 3 wards migrate? Where to?
There are those who feel that you've talked about conservation and that it is necessary and that there is need for a legal framework for that. But there's some who say, you're just speaking from both sides of your mouth, and you're doing this because most of the residents of that area are actually from Bomet, which is, so these are your people, correct?
Yes,
most of the
that's
people
true.
who are there.
But the point here is that they are not just Kipsigis in that area. We also have Maasai. We have got the Dorobos there. We have got even the Kikuyu. We have got Gusi.
And some of those populations are the ones who are being seen to be the first ones to actually leave. In this current removal of persons from the area. Those are the communities that are living.
Like I saw, there was a Maasai group that was seen to be moving. And I know them, I even know their names, and I know where they live. They just live 1.5 kilometers away from the forest, and they graze in the forest. So on that day that they were focusing on television, they stage managed a movement from the forest where they normally take their cows to, and then they took them across, and then they went and locked them in their farm.
Do you need law?
So there was no real movement.
You're saying it was stage
managed.
But
what I want to say is this: we need a law, not even a law, a declaration. A very clear declaration that must be in conformity with the procedures of law. And then the government should move forth, do public participation.
Let's talk about the titles. The Ndongo Land Commission held that, quote, sanctity of title depends on its legality and not otherwise. It goes on to say, in fact, there is no such concept at common law as an absolute title. No such thing exists. Also, the Prime Minister's task force, though you say it is an opinion, said, quote, in the Maasai Mau Trust Land Forest, all title deeds for parcels of land encroaching in the Maasai Mau Trust Land Forest should also be revoked. Is that more opinion to you?
Yes, they are saying they should be revoked. So how do you go about revoking them? Do you just wake up and say they are paper titles? Remember, I think about 2 weeks ago, I saw an article by Mr. Mwaita, who was the then Commissioner of Lands, and he said, we did all that was necessary to be done under the existing laws at that time, and that everything was approved by government. The point I'm saying here is that government could have erred, but it does not take away the responsibility of successive governments from honoring it, that another government did this. And if the issue has to be remedied, you don't go punishing the ordinary citizens. You say, no, this was a mistake by government, Kenya government. Doesn't matter whether someone else was leading it or not.
But in spite of
the point here is we can actually remedy the situation. Yes, we believe it is possible to remedy the situation.
But in spite of what he said, the Prime Minister's task force again said that none of the 22 blocks of the forest, including the Maasai Mau court, have been fully surveyed. So how can there be legitimate titles to land that has not been fully surveyed?
Yes.
Doesn't that mean that those titles then are fraudulent in some kind?
That means even the fellow saying it was ballooned is admitting that there was never any surveying. So if there was never any survey,
then there's no valid title?
No, not necessarily that. It does not invalidate the settlement of the people. In fact, it even fortifies the claim by the locals that they have been living there, that they lived there. There was actually no surveying. You cannot say this land was 2,000 acres because it was 2,000 hectares on the basis of which survey.
Having said that, since you're agreeing that there was a mistake, which government are you holding responsible for this? Is it the Kibaki government?
The Kenya government. And the Kenya government is perpetual. The Kenya government...
True, but which administration?
No, we can't go in that direction. I'm talking about the Kenya government, which is permanent. There is perpetual succession.
But there is the question of accountability. So is it the Moi government, for instance?
You can't talk about Moi because the administration, the structure of government is not a Kibaki. You can't hold Kibaki for it. You cannot hold even Uhuru Kenyatta for everything that is happening in this country. Look at corruption. What's happening? Are you going to hold Uhuru Kenyatta responsible for the corrupt practices all over the place?
So findings, we talked about how land had been dished out to political cronies during the Moi administration. What do you make of that?
The same was done during the first Kenyatta administration. The whole of Rift Valley, in fact, why you are finding pressure of land on the South Rift is because there was pressure from people who migrated from Central Province downwards to Nakuru. And they were settled by a government headed by the first president of this republic. And you cannot say nonsense, get out, get lost. No.
When does accountability then begin for you?
They were settled by a government of Kenya. Since 1963, all governments are legitimate governments of this republic.
But is there individual responsibility in governments?
Individual responsibility in government relates to your specific individual action. But when it is a collective activity within government, there is no one you are going to hold.
Is there such a thing as collective government?
Yes,
for instance, if it's a title of land, where would that come from?
Let me tell you, if cabinet approves it, it is you are not going to hold any individual
So
minister.
You're saying everybody is guilty, nobody is responsible?
Yes, everybody is guilty. The only thing where we are right now is to remedy the problem. We must reverse the degradation of the environment everywhere in this.
And you remedy it by your specific recommendation as we go to break?
In fact, the Prime Minister's task force had made several reasonable recommendations, including compensation of the people, relocating the people. Those recommendations were there.
It only talked about third-party purchases for value being, so only those. And it was less than 9 million shillings, I believe.
No. Third party, all these people settled there, the 60,000 families are third-party purchasers of land.
All of them?
Yes, they are third-party purchasers of land sold by individuals who were first allocated the land and which title was issued by the Ministry of Lands.
That's not what the task force found. It found that applied to less than a third of those who had settled in the Maasai
I would like
Mau.
them to show us who are these one-third they are talking about.
If there is a legal provision in place, and if this one-third are compensated, you'd be happy with that?
I would have no problem with that.
All right, we're taking a break. We're back with Isaac Ruto after this.